motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The ongoing situation involving Conor Benn and his absence from boxing, Conor Benn's boxing career, it's at a crossroads. Eddie Hearn expects Conor Benn's future to become clearer in October as the boxer currently serves a UCAD suspension. Benn's boxing career has suffered since his failed VADA tests for clomiphene. The substance is banned as it is known for concealing PED usage. Benn maintained that he was innocent as he suggested there could be contamination. However, that was never proven as UCAD suspended Benn. The Chris Eubank Jr. fight was called off. The National Anti-Doping Agency then lifted Benn's suspension. However, reports indicated this was due to jurisdiction.
This wasn't because Conor proved his innocence or proved cross-contamination. It was because the positive tests were from the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency and not UCAD. All of Conor's UCAD tests came back clear. It's the VADA tests that weren't.
And what the BBBOC normally uses to adjudicate are their UCAD findings, not VADA findings. So that's where it became a jurisdictional issue, and that helped to lift the suspension for a little while.
But the BBBOC appealed the NADP's decision to lift the suspension.
There were suggestions that UCAD could not enforce VADA findings rather than Benn proving he had no clomiphene. That means Benn could box outside the UK as he beat Rodolfo Orozco and Peter Dobson in the United States. The performances were far from impressive as he won unanimous decisions and not by way of knockout.
Some found that suspicious. Where did Conor's knockout power go?
There's been a lack of knockout power since he failed those tests and came under scrutiny, although Benn's camp will argue that he's working his way back from a tough period. UCAD reinstated Benn's suspension, leaving the boxer with a fight to prove his case. Hearn expects further developments in October.
So the NADP, at least temporarily, lifted Benn's suspension, which allowed him to box in America. But the BBBOC appealed their decision, and they were granted their appeal. Thus, Benn was suspended.
And that's where we are now. Benn is suspended.
You can't box here, you can't box there, you can't box anywhere.
Conor Benn's return is going to be massive because when you talk about profile outside of AJ and Fury, Conor Benn's profile is bigger than all of them. We'll know more early October how that will play out. We've had a lot of questions as to why he doesn't just take a 2-year ban.
Yeesh.
The test was in June of 2022, but to Conor's detriment, he's never wanted to concede to a ban because he believes in his innocence. He's never wanted to do a deal, and it cost him a lot of time, Hearn said. Benn's problem is that his standing has dropped massively amongst British fans. There is a perception that Benn did not cooperate with the authorities and has been as transparent as he should have been. The boxer's notorious interview with Piers Morgan did not go well since Benn failed to prove contamination.
Instead seeking a veil through a technicality, a jurisdictional technicality, and like I said, that worked for a little while.
But after the NADP granted the BBBOC their appeal, the suspension was back in place.
Conor's been in limbo ever since.
In contrast with other boxers like Ryan Garcia, Benn has handled it badly. Garcia has received a year ban, which in reality is simply how long some boxers fight per year.
The real difference between Ryan's doping case and Benn's doping case is who's presiding over it.
The BBBOC takes doping cases a lot more seriously than any commission in America, and the penalties are a lot harsher, anywhere in between 2 years to 4 years.
Yeah, I've seen guys get suspended for upwards of 4 years, like Zolani Tete.
Zolani Tete.
The commissions in America, when they suspend a guy, it's for nowhere near as long.
Zolani Tete.
Which is why you always hear me say that America has a revolving door policy when it comes to fighters that test positive for banned substances. The bans are a slap on the wrist compared to how they treat them in the UK.
This thing with Benn and the BBBOC has been going on since 2022. We're in 2024.
The story now is that Conor Benn took the ban and will now return from April 2025 onwards. Benn has wasted the prime years of his career, losing a massive amount of money, but also staining his reputation. The Chris Eubank Jr. fight is unlikely unless Benn takes less than favorable terms. Eubank Jr. has been linked with the Billy Joe Saunders rematch, which may be bigger and more profitable, while Benn wants the big names. His resume does not suggest he has earned those fights. But Hearn hopes to make the biggest fights out there for him.
Whoever wrote the article is being a little bit dramatic, that Benn has wasted his prime years.
First, Conor Benn actually did box last year. He boxed 2 times. It's this one that he will have set out completely. But even if he does, he's only 27 years old. I wouldn't say that his prime is completely squandered.
I think the author of the article is being a little bit dramatic.
He's had these couple of little runouts in America that are a little bit of a waste of time for him. He wants to dive into the biggest fight possible, and that fight is Eubank. I won't hold my breath that it happens, but what I will guarantee is when it is resolved, he will be in the biggest fight I can possibly make, says Eddie Hearn.
And Conor's reputation?
You guys know me. I'm a realist. Anyone from Tyson Fury to Canelo Alvarez to Oscar Valdez to Jarrell Miller, Dillian White,
They've all tested positive for banned substances, some guys more than once.
So when you talk about the damage that this may have done to Conor Benn's reputation, I don't think it's done all that much damage to it at all. No more damage than those guys' doping fiascos did to their reputations. I wouldn't worry about it.
See, Ryan tested positive, and he's been acting like a jackass the whole time, but some people still support him. Some people still stand by him.
Some people are waiting for him to come back, so I've no doubts that there are some people out there that when Conor Benn comes back, whether they like it or not, they're going to be paying attention.
To either root for him or tear him down.
It's my perspective. I'm a little bit ambivalent when it comes to the whole doping in the sport of boxing issue when so many boxers seem to test positive for banned substances. It's almost like behind the curtain, everybody's on something.
Seems that way.
So I don't know whether or not I should be outraged or indifferent whenever one of these situations arises.
It just is what it is.
Story now is Conor's gonna sit out what remains of this year, and he will return after April of next year. Who against? I don't know. Where?
154? 147? Can he make 147? Further insights into that.
Plot twist. Eddie Hearn used Boots to get Conor Benn in position to get that motherfucking title. He been mad at goddamn Boots for a long time, and he wanted Conor Benn to be the motherfucking champion. He gonna convince Boots to go up to 154, and Conor Benn gonna be the champion at 147. Watch what I tell you.
Brian Norman Sr. is still running spin, saying that behind the scenes, Eddie Hearn is now positioning Conor Benn to fight for Boots' IBF title after Boots vacates it. That he's not going to go through with the Karen Chukadzian rematch, the mandated rematch. He's going to move up. And when he does,
Who cares?
at the very worst, all it means is that Eddie Hearn is positioning another one of his fighters to keep that IBF title on their side of things. There's not much nefarious about that. I think that's what most promoters would do in that situation.
Moreover, Conor Benn doesn't get the chance to do anything if you guys would have accepted Eddie Hearns' offer. Any one of the 3 offers they made you.
Remember that Conor Benn is not set to return until April of next year. So let's say that what Brian Norman Sr. is saying is true. That wouldn't come into effect until many months from now.
What does that have to do with you ducking Boots?
The world is still reacting to that. I saw former champion Ishe Smith say, Brian Norman bet on himself, I can't knock that, but his handlers fumbled a major bag, to be honest. If Boots does indeed move up, then what? 7 figures has always been a hard figure to make in this sport. To fumble it, based on what I gotta pay my team, etc. Man, that wasn't a good look at all.
It still isn't.
The spin job is in full swing. So when Brian Norman Sr. takes to social media with this news about Conor potentially fighting for the IBF title at some point, it's little more than a deflection, a distraction from what's going on here and now. And what's going on here and now is you turned down close to $2 million to go box on some kid's undercard.
You're trying to distract us from that.
I've seen all sorts of narratives going up. Some saying that Eddie Hearn lost the Karen Chukadzian purse bid on purpose.
Okay, I'll be your Huckleberry.
I don't actually believe he lost the purse bid on purpose, but let's say that he did. Well, we don't get to that purse bid until you guys reject 3 offers from Eddie Hearn.
If you would have accepted any one of those offers, the purse bid and Karen probably wouldn't have even come into it. At that point, they would have just had to get Karen to step aside so that you 2 guys could fight. But you 2 guys didn't fight because you didn't accept any of Eddie's offers. You priced yourselves out.
So this whole notion that Eddie Hearn lost the Chukadzian purse bid on purpose does not exonerate the Normans of culpability for sabotaging this fight.
It doesn't.
All these deflections, distractions, losing the Chukadzian purse bid, or Conor Benn being positioned to fight for the IBF title. None of that comes into it if you wouldn't have priced yourselves out.
Nothing you've said so far changes that.
You were on the Boxing Voice trying to explain yourselves, trying to explain why you didn't accept $1.7 million. That's the smoking gun. You already told on yourselves that you were looking for in excess of 1.7 million. What you were looking for is 2.2.
That's 2.2 too much.
How do I know that's too much? Do you see anybody else offering these guys 2.2 million or anything in that neighborhood?
No.
Why does Brian Norman Sr. seem so happy that they walked away from all that money? Maybe it's because now his son isn't under pressure to fight Jaron Ennis, that Jaron Ennis might leave this division and they won't have to deal with him. That's why he's so happy.
Maybe they like their chances a lot better against the other guys like Mario or Imantas Stanionis. Not that they're getting offers from them, because they're not.
But maybe they like their chances a lot better against those fighters than that fighter, that particular fighter, Jaron Ennis.
Boots potentially leaving the division is music to their ears.
So I see that Brian Norman Sr. is still running a spin job for his son, and some people are trying to help him, suggesting that Eddie lost the purse bid on purpose. I don't think he lost the purse bid on purpose. What I think is that Eddie didn't anticipate anybody would put up any money for Karen Chukadzian.
He put up more money in the Cody Crowley purse bid than this one, because at least then he knew Cody Crowley is a PBC fighter. He's represented by TGB Promotions, so you're gonna have to put up a substantial offer to make sure you beat them out. But with Karen, who would have figured that anybody's invested enough in Karen Chukadzian that they're gonna stake $2 million of their money to host his fight against the guy who beat him?
Who would have figured that? I wouldn't have. I don't think Eddie Hearn did either. I don't think Eddie Hearn felt anybody was going to put up that kind of money for that fighter.
He's telling himself he ain't got to bid that much, because who else is going to want to pick up this fight?
He was taken by surprise, and that's why I don't think he put up that much money for that show. I don't think he sabotaged it. I don't think he blew the bid on purpose. I think he's taken by surprise. In any event, none of this would have ever got that far if the Normans hadn't have ducked Boots.
Simple.
Men's Cruiserweight news. The WBA officially announced the purse bid scheduled to take place tomorrow for the Cruiserweight mandatory fight with Gilberto Ramirez and former champion Uniel Dorticos has been cancelled, as both parties reached an agreement. The WBA will issue a statement in the coming days to clarify the situation of this division. Rumor has it that behind the scenes what they're working on is a Zurdo Ramirez versus Chris Billam-Smith unification match. Though because the order for a Dorticos fight already came down, they have to get that guy to step aside.
The story is they already have.
Louis de Cuba said, "We believe we have made a good deal for Dorticos. He will be paid a sum of money as if he had fought Zurdo, and then he will go directly into a fight against the winner of Zurdo versus CBS."
It's a good deal for Dorticos. You're basically getting paid for not fighting, and you don't have to give up anything. You don't have to give up your mandatory position. You're still gonna get your title shot. You're just being paid to wait.
All things considered, that's a good deal. Making money for not fighting.
You guys already know who I think is gonna win the Zurdo Ramirez versus Chris Billam-Smith unification match. I think Zurdo is going to win a points decision. I think the aesthetic of that fight is going to be similar to the aesthetic of the Arsen Goulamarian fight. I think Zurdo is faster on his feet with faster hands than Chris Billam-Smith, and he's going to move and punch.
I think Chris is strong, stronger than Zurdo, packs a bigger punch, and he's probably more durable, but he's slower. Slower on his feet, slower hands.
And remember that this is a Golden Boy promotion show. That unless Chris goes in there and knocks Zurdo out, or just ragdolls him for all 36 minutes, unless that happens, it's unlikely he wins a decision.
If the fight is even remotely competitive throughout, in all likelihood, Zurdo's gonna win a decision. That is the likeliest outcome as far as I'm concerned. Though irrespective of all of that, if Zurdo lives up to my expectations or if he doesn't, the winner of the fight's gotta fight Uniel.
It's a dangerous fight. He's a dangerous guy, big puncher.
Now, the way I've seen fighters beat Uniel Dorticos in the past is they crowd him. You see, Uniel, he's a devastating puncher, big puncher, knockout puncher, but he's got really long arms. and he needs room to get them out and generate that devastating power. So when he fought Murat Gassiev, what Murat did was he crowded him. He tucked himself behind that high guard, marched forward, and didn't give Uniel room to throw.
It also helped that Murat Gassiev was a devastating puncher, mid-range to inside, pressure guy, very comfortable within close quarters.
But that's how he beat him. That's how Murat Gassiev beat him, by crowding him and working him mid-range to inside. The way that Mayris Briedis beat him, what I remember of the Mayris Briedis fight, is he timed him. He timed him with the jab and just kept interrupting him.
Mayris Briedis is a mid-range to inside fighter too. That's where Dorticos is vulnerable.
Within close quarters, because a guy with arms that long needs room to let them out, needs room to throw them. Can't get that room if you don't give it to him.
So irrespective of who wins the Zerto versus CBS fight, when the time comes for them to fight Dorticos, they've got to crowd him.
We saw Chris Billam-Smith do that to Richard Riakporhe. Richard Riakporhe, he's got long arms too, generates great power when he can get full extension on the punch.
And Chris didn't let him.
Chris was outworking him mid-range to inside, throwing punches in bunches, not giving Richard the room and real estate to get his punches out and get his punches off.
So he wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory. He has some experience doing this.
So you have to say that Uniel is a vastly more experienced fighter than Richard Riakporhe, that this would be a tougher assignment than that one was. When you think about
Zerto, for his part, would have to return to his roots, his pressure-fighting roots, mid-range to inside. We know he's capable there. We know he's comfortable there.
Where he's taken a shine to moving around and using his jab and boxing guys up for this fight, I think he would have to return to his roots and try to break down Junior Dorticos mid-range to inside. Stay with him, stay on him, and don't give him enough room to throw.
You also got to remember, this guy's up there in age.
I think he's either 40 or close to 40. So if you make it a rough and tumble fight, a physical fight where you're putting pressure on him, his age will start to show.
He's got no inside game.
You often hear it said that a fighter's power is the last thing to go. So you don't give him any opportunities to use that power. You've got to try to wear him down and wear him out.
They've got to deal with him.
But I guess that also means that beyond their fight, they won't be at liberty to move into another unification match. Another unification with, say, Chayo Pataya, or the winner of Gavor versus Rositsky.
I guess not.